Let's not make this official, Outlander. Move along.
The last time I talked about Morrowind, I dived a little into the basics and really just the beginning of the game. I kind of want to continue down that same path I was going down and continue to just explain some things in an orderly manner as things come to me. I do kind of want to briefly touch on some early side quests as well as Balmora itself because it is the first big town you come to before Vivek. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the detailed journal I was talking about last time, and a few people asked me what my character build was, so I guess I'll break that down as best as I can as well. For the character I built while recording this, I chose a dark elf and named him Miraidon. The name is literally a Pokemon name. I don't know why I decided that, it just came to me in the moment. I chose to make my own class and chose to specialize in combat with my main governing stats as willpower and intelligence. Major skills were block, long blade, heavy armor, athletics, and restoration. And for minor skills, I chose conjuration, acrobatics, mercantile, speechcraft, and armor. This was only really my second time through the game, so I am still learning a few things as I realized quickly that my skills, health, magic, and stamina pools were okay, but they needed some work if I was going to do anything late game. Going back into my journal to get some information about the current tasks at hand, and this is something I really wish RPGs had these days. Just take a look at how detailed these entries are at just the start of the game. The thorough and detailed entries this game has is something that really should have carried on to other titles, as I can't tell you how annoying it is to get a task in a game like Skyrim or even Cyberpunk or something, and it's just go here or do this thing. I understand a lot of newer games do have cutscenes and such to give context, but if I save and continue a game, sometimes it's really nice to have a long, detailed recap of what I did the last time. One of my favorite early game journal entries, or side quests rather, is the one you can get from talking to some lady on the way to Balmora. Her name is Mori and seems to be in a predicament with a bandit named Nelos. Only it's sort of a lover's predicament, you can say, as you will come to find that she has fallen in love with the man after he just robbed her. And the journal entry is honestly pretty funny if you ask me. I fear for her heart, for these outlaws care nothing for others, only the booty they can obtain. This quest really isn't anything special, as you were just delivering a message to both parties, Mori and Nellis, but Mori does mention that she has a friend that I may get along with in Tel Arun. Maybe I'll take a trip out there in my travels. Still, it's a nice little quest that didn't have to be there, but it is, just for the heck of it. Honestly, exploring Balmora itself to me is pretty amazing. Maybe it's because of how simple the engine was at the time, but it feels like there are more places and more things to do compared to when you get into a town like Whiterun and Skyrim. Things can even seem a bit overwhelming, but if you enjoy multitasking and gathering information, you'll be fine. After leaving Kias's house, I decided to kind of wander around a bit. I talked to a few different shopkeepers and a few random people. I even found good old Nine Toes' house, and he said there's a Khajiit in town that will buy the moon sugar he just gave me. Free gold, I guess. At this point, I really didn't know how important it was to talk to Kias's subordinates, but I figured they were just there to give help, advice, or training, so I continued on and started to join some guilds, which are all pretty interesting in their own right. Honestly, I've always stumbled into House Hlalu, sorry, I have a hard time pronouncing that, and heard about the guy who was murdered, so I decided to give that a crack this time, in addition to joining the Fighters Guild this time. There's a lot more to join, and I even debated on making my way to join the Imperials, but I didn't want to overwhelm myself too much with side quests and numerous guilds. These first quests you can attempt are what really made me realize that Morrowind does not mess around. I accepted the first quest from House Hlalu, and I tried very hard sleuthing around to find the killer of Raylan Hlalu, and I even discovered who he was and where he was, but I couldn't figure out how to attack him or kill him without having his cronies all attack me at once. I assumed I was too low level, or I just needed to have a higher personality skill to persuade him or intimidate him to one-on-one me. I actually kind of like this mechanic, though. The other first quest involves disguising yourself as Felson Sathandis, who's apparently dead, and you just need to make your way to Aldraun to receive a package from Naminda, but I will save that for another time. You're supposed to go to the Fighters Guild to get information from Hasfat and Tabalis anyway, so I decided to join up with the Fighters Guild really quick for some free supplies, and I added killing rats to my to-do list. But first, we talk to Hasfat and figure out what kind of favor we have to do before we can learn about the Nerevarine prophecy. This is only the beginning, but for some reason at this point when I first played the game, I really felt like things were about to get interesting, because you have to travel to a Dwemer ruin named Arkingthand and find a Dwemer puzzle box. The disappearance of the Dwemer has always fascinated me in these games, and you get to dive right into a Dwemer ruin pretty early on, which is pretty cool if you ask me. It was pretty funny to me when I found out the puzzle box was right when you walked into the ruin. The first time I played, I just found this by chance, but I've heard most players used to scour this ruin forever, not realizing that the puzzle box is right there the first time. I did end up exploring the ruin this time, though, and I came out with a lot of items to sell, a fancy new Dwemer claymore, and my very first piece of dwarven armor. I also found out that pretty much any light source, whether it be a torch, candle, or lantern, can be carried by your character, which is also a nice little detail. I honestly loved this dungeon dive, and it really made me see what the rest of the game might be like. I even leveled up a couple times doing this, and I briefly want to mention that I noticed the leveling system was very straightforward. Honestly, to me, it felt a little like Fallout's older leveling system, as you just get to pick 3 of the main traits each time you level up. When you return to Hasfat and Balmora, things really start to get interesting when you begin to learn about the 6th house and the Nerevarine prophecy. Briefly, I will give the spark notes. The 6th house, House Dagoth, ran by Vorin Dagoth, aka Dagoth was branded as a traitor to the tribunal. Some say it was because of his lust for power and the tools of Kagernak, and some say it was to avenge the murder of his dear friend Nerevar. The Nerevarine prophecy is the belief in Morrowind that the hero Nerevar would be reincarnated after his death at the Battle of Red Mountain in the First Era, although it is unclear how Nerevar even died at Red Mountain. Unfortunately, Hasfat does not give us the information we need on the Nerevarine cult, so we must report back to Kius for another task. I apologize if I'm not super in-depth with the lore, as I am not really trying to deep dive into the lore in this video. I just wanted to give a brief explanation on everything that's going on. We give Kius the notes on the 6th house, and he tasks us with going to the Mages Guild to talk to Sharn Gramuzgob about the Nerevarine cult. I head over to the Mages Guild and decided to join them for the free items they give you as well. Also, with all the gold I had, I decided to buy some new spells, and I even trained some skills. I started to feel a little more confident with my character at this point. Sharn tasks us with retrieving the skull of Luvule Andrano from the Andrano ancestral tomb before she gives you what you need. She gives you a fire blade that I unfortunately cannot use because it is a short blade, but the spells, scrolls, and weapon I currently have was more than sufficient for the task. This little dungeon dive to me is super simple, as there's only like one actual spirit, a couple bone walkers, and like 5 skeletons in this little place. Nothing really too eventful here. I cast my first conjuration spell here though, and took out the spirit pretty quickly. And I'm sure, like most people do here, I just cut my way through the bad guys, grabbed the skull, and headed back to Balmora to learn more about the Nerevarine cult. We return to Sharn, and she tells us more about Nerevar, the Nerevarine prophecy, and the Nerevarine cult. I talked a little bit about this, but I feel like I was a little too vague, so here we go. The Nerevarine prophecy, like I said, is the belief that Nerevar will be reincarnated after the Battle of Red Mountain. The Battle of Red Mountain was between the 7 houses of the Tribunal and the Dwemer, until the Dwemer mysteriously disappeared. The Nerevarine cult follows the Nerevarine prophecies and charters, which essentially means First Era, old school Morrowind stuff. Again, I'm sorry I'm not deep diving into the lore, but these videos would be an hour long if I explained each thing in detail. And I want to note that a lot of Morrowind lore is meant to be mired in mystery, and it's supposed to leave you to make your own decisions. Really a who betrayed who scenario, I guess. We give Kias the information he needs, but once again, I hate to do this, guys, but I'm gonna put an end to this one for now. Things are starting to get interesting, though, and in the next one, we venture onto Vivec and explore probably my favorite Elder Scrolls city I've ever seen. Again, I cannot thank you all enough for watching. You guys are amazing if you watched all the way to the end, and I really hope you stick around for some more. See ya.